All right, welcome to episode 19 of the Athletic Philosopher podcast. I am your host, Jordan Goldstein, former sport history, sport philosophies, sport sociology professor. Boy, that's a mouthful. Current life coach, fitness coach, endurance training coach, tribal prof, all of the above, none of the above, sometimes in between. And I'm very excited for today's episode. I am delighted to introduce and welcome Dennis Michael Hynes to the podcast. Dennis is nobody special on Twitter. That's his own tag. Certainly, I think he's special. I really appreciate the interactions and what I've seen from Dennis in terms of his appreciation of the deep elements of physical culture in terms of training, but also connecting that to philosophy, ways of living, and really articulating, I think, how we can live a good life through consistent physical activity up into our golden years. You know, I get a lot of inspiration from people 2, 3, 4, 5 decades older than me who I see getting after it for all of the right reasons. And I think Dennis falls into that category. And so I'm really honored and privileged to invite him and to have this open-ended conversation. So thank you, Dennis, for being here, and say hello to the beautiful people out there.
Thank you, Jordan. I appreciate that. This is one of those things that, kind of the little motto that I have about comfort being cage. This is one of those things where I'm, to some degree, pretty uncomfortable. This is out of my wheelhouse, basically. I don't do this very often, but so I'm excited, a little bit nervous, and since we're rolling, let's roll. Yeah, I was given the chance here to ask the first question, and I think just what pops into my head is, Jordan, at what point, or what was it that was the inflection point that shifted you from academia into where you are now, or where you're going now? How did that happen?
Great question. And what I hope to have from these conversations, just for everybody out there listening, is like an exposition and an exhibition of what it's like to have a real conversation with real ideas. And Dennis mentioned, as we were talking right before the podcast, about he had some questions for me. And so I decided, well, let's do the uncomfortable thing together, and I'll relinquish control of my own podcast and allow you to dictate the start here. So we're both going to go into the unknown together, which is great. The inflection point in terms of knowing, I would say, like, knowing exactly when my academic career died would be what pops into my mind. And it's so funny because I have the date. Like, I have the date, and I have it almost down to the minute of
Yeah,
when
it's a
that
big thing.
inflection point happened. It was March 14th, 2020. I was called into the office of my department chair. I was a professor in the kinesiology department in the Faculty of Science at a university in Waterloo, Ontario, called Wilfrid Laurier University. I had been a full professor. I was a full professor in terms of salary and benefits and being a member of the faculty, but I was only on limited contracts. So, like, you'd sign for a year and then you'd re-up for the next year.
Right.
And the way that our teachers union had negotiated things was that you could only have 4 years of those limited contracts, and then the university was forced to either offer you a tenure track position or see you later.
See you later.
And I got called into my
You got
department
to see you
chairs.
later?
I got see you later, dude. I got see you later. And I got told this 20 minutes before I had to go give a 2-hour lecture to my Canadian sport history class, which was very difficult. You know, you talk about go out and perform. It's like, shoot, you just got told you got canned. And now you got to go and do the job. And it's like, well, that sucks. but I was given the opportunity to come back as what's known as a contract faculty appointment. So now instead of me being salaried and being told, here, you're teaching these 3 courses, I'm hired by the course just to teach the course at about whatever, 40% of the salary. uh, so I don't want to get into the silliness of the
No,
bureaucratic
I was just
rules and
curious
the union stuff,
'cause
but
that's a
that was it.
life changing event. And it's like, how did you get there? How did that happen?
Yeah. And for me personally, like I was already a black sheep in the academy.
Good for you.
I had basically blacklisted myself
Yeah.
um, against the administration and against the faculty. We had an international free speech scandal that rocked my university in 2017. People know the name Dr. Jordan Peterson, I'm sure. And if
See,
you'll remember,
believe it or not, that's why I started with that question because I thought that might come up.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was all connected because I had identified myself as a faculty member who wasn't interested in playing ball with woke politics and diversity
Right.
initiatives and censorship agendas. And I was willing to put myself out there as a non-tenured professor, right? Someone without protection. And this likely, I don't know for sure, but to suggest that that didn't have something to do with me not getting tenure when I should have got tenure. Like I should have got my tenure track. I had a
Yeah.
good publishing record. I had amazing teaching reviews. Everybody in my department liked me, which is maybe the most important thing. They liked the fact that I was in the faculty teaching the courses they didn't want to teach and
Right.
getting rave reviews from the students who were all coming through my courses. Um, so this idea of falling on your sword or like standing up for what's right, no matter what the consequences are to you, is something I had learned as a professor. And when I got called into that meeting, this was like March 14th, 2020. Like the world's about to shut down. It was, I think it was the week before, this is COVID time. The week before is like the NBA shut down. And then I was watching universities
Yeah.
and
It was the
colleges in the States
same. It's just falling off the table. Just boom, 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 boom.
shutting down. So I was like, we're going to be shut down. So
So your world changed.
I got fired on the Wednesday, and then on Friday, my university shut down for 2 years. I didn't go back onto campus physically for over 2 years to be able to teach. So it was then that I knew like my university career is done. I was like, I'm only really gonna see if I can get tenure at this university because my wife had a good job. I'm not about to start traveling all over North America in hopes of getting another one of these like 10-year pipe dream jobs and then working for another administration that I don't agree with and is kind of like hostile to me and all the things I believe in. Um, and it was literally like those 2 days later, it's like, I got to do something. I got to do something. And I think from the brief little conversation you and I had, it's like COVID was this opportunity for so many people to realize I got to do something different. Like something has to change
Yeah.
in my life.
Yeah.
And I can either be a victim to the circumstances of this like pandemic, or I can use the opportunity to build something and build momentum for myself. And that's what I did with online coaching. And I went through like many different periods of what I wanted to do online and how I thought I could utilize my particular skills. But, that's sort of like moved me into my journey now.
Good.
But for you, you also sort of used COVID as this opportunity, and in particular to take control of your physical health. So maybe, however much you want to get into that
Some degree,
story.
it was more. I think for a lot of people, it was just a reassessment of the whole situation that you thought the status quo. And I've always kind of been of that nature, is to question authority and question the status quo. And it was like, this is really the scales are really falling off of everybody's eyes. Everybody, and literally, it didn't happen. About half of people saw it, and half of people didn't. And it was just like very interesting to watch how it whipsawed really society and we end up where we are right now with it, but it was actually that period of time was very, I wouldn't say it was very productive in the outer world for me, but interiorly, it was a really good time. You, that's what I'm kind of locked into now. I'm just starting to come back out of this very internal and reflective place to be in because you're with yourself all the time. It was like that whole sense of when I was young, that was one of those little kind of a fantasy, how the young men are, you think, oh, I'm the hero's journey thing, I'm living in a cave and I'm sharpening my tools and everything. And then when time comes, here I am, it's that kind of thing. So, it's like, well, this is it. This is what you got. It's been handed to you. You do not get to, well, you could, but it was a lot more friction to get outside and interact. I mean, at the time when COVID hit, I was regularly hitting 3 gyms during a week. I would hit 3 different gyms doing different things, and that went to 0. So you have to be very creative, and you have to think outside of that box and start doing some different sorts of things because I've always been physically active, and I'm a strong proponent of the idea that much of what we know and much of who we are is embodied through our actions. It's what what you do and how you live, how you sit, how you do things brings you knowledge and develops you in ways that we have. If we want to get philosophical, let's break into that now. I think it kind of starts with Descartes, the whole Cartesian thing of splitting everything up. Your mind, body, this, and it's always, and there's that's a good way to look at things, but it's not the only way to look at things. And it's the map. It's not the territory. We're throwing the baby out because we got, oh, look at this nice fresh bathwater. That's great, man. But you're throwing the baby out. Don't do that. So for me, the whole thing with COVID and everything was to look at how many different things that I could work on that I didn't really have time to work on when everything was spinning. You said, oh, I don't have time for this. So my meditation changed, a lot more meditation, a lot more, like I say, body work, introspection, a lot more analysis of what makes me tick. And then, of course, sitting there, basically seeing the world through this screen, everything that's going on, and saying, well, how does people work? How does this work? And one of the things I saw was that, and I've always been of this mind as somewhat. We were talking earlier in our communication. I called myself a techno-Luddite, and it was like, yeah, that is pretty accurate. I have a lover's quarrel with the digital world. I think it's great that you can do things like this. I mean, look at this. This is like Jetsons. Here I am sitting here, and when we're doing this real time, it's happening. But for me, and it goes back to the embodiment thing, is that that portion of that's so thrown up into the cortex, way up here, and what I think we're missing. I think it was McLuhan that said that we weren't made to live at the speed of light. So it's like we've got this thing of we're omitting our survival and our instincts and all that stuff that but we're standing on that. This is the forebrain, that's also smart and loves all the bells and whistles and stuff. You've got to support what's underneath that. Don't let that go away. And that's where the physicality, the physical life. Like there, there's something when you go out and run, and you're running, and there's something that's happening there that's far and away be greater than just physical exercise. It's not just that. It's there's you're resonating with something that's so primal and so basic to who you are and what you are as an organism. You can't throw that out and say, well, I'll just case in point, here's something. It always struck me. It's like and it's a metaphor, but it'll fit. I remember once watching Joe Rogan, right? And he's talking, and somebody was promoting the value of learning languages, different languages and things like that. Good morning, son. Just came in on
To go in. I'm just gonna go close the shears because I'm getting
you.
blinded. But I love this. I love the sun. Continue, please. I
Well,
love this
so
train of thought you are
he's sitting
developing.
there
I
and
love it.
he's going, oh, I don't need to learn the language. I can just pull it up on Google and do Google Translate. And it's like, okay, you've got that function, you've got something that can do that for you, but what you're just skimming the surface. When you learn a language, you're not just learning different sounds that are communicate an idea or something like that. You're also learning culture. You're learning how people think. You're learning so much more. And you flip it in to your other side. It's like you learn that the things that it takes you to learn another language, or the things that it takes you to get up and run, are they're doing much more than just what is on the surface. It's underneath it, all the business is going on, and you don't want that to attrit. You don't want, if you don't use it, you lose it. That's nature's way. That's a first principle. It's like, if you don't do that, you're going to lose that. And that's the whole concept. That's one thing I thought we might explore, is this whole idea of comfort as a cage and do hard things.
Yes.
The reason that I started doing that was, and I was doing all these, I do these goofy physical things, little kind of stunty kind of things. And it's like, that's something that catches people's attention. And it is an embodiment of what it is that I'm expressing there when I say that. But that's not, that's at a very surface level. Doing hard things is not just about doing physical things or doing risky things, or suffering, or just beating yourself or whatever. Those are hard, yeah, but that's doing. Here's an example of doing a hard thing: is you have a situation where you're having a heated discussion with your spouse, okay, and you've got a zinger. You've got one in your pocket that you can really fling out there and snap back. Doing the hard thing is realizing that you're reacting from all these chemicals and stuff that's bubbling up in you. Go out and take a walk and come back in, and your whole day, your whole life can change from where you're sending it. That's the hard thing. Keep your mouth shut. A lot of times the hard thing is the thing that you don't do. It's the thing, it's the thing you take away, not the thing you add on, the thing you hold back, not the thing you push in. So that's kind of the thing, is like, because I get that from people sometimes, it's like, oh yeah, blah blah blah, and it's like, okay, I'm not getting this point across. It's not so much that it's just doing hard stuff, driving nails in under your fingernails or whatever. That's not what I'm talking about. It's more substantial than that. It's like, you have to, if we developed in such a way that effort is how we stay in the game. That's how we stay in life. That's what survival. It takes effort, and that's like when you're talking about. We were talking about sport. I wanted to get into that because it's like trying to get an understanding of what it is and it's such a wide. There's so many spokes to that wheel. Why is sport what it is? Why does it have the grip that it has on us? Why does it do that? And I my conjecture is that it's because it's tapping into those very, very deep, primal, tribal things that are just like, this is how we lived for 100,000 years, and this is how it's now being reflected in this world we're in now.
Yeah. It's embodied and
Yeah,
encoded into our collective DNA
it's there.
effectively.
Yeah,
It
and
it
it's a
it it
reflection of
is.
that. It is an expression of that. It's just the same way as so many things are, but it's like that's one of the strongest ones that we have because you look at how many things it affects, how many, like I say, how many spokes are in that wheel. It's like wow. Because and for me, the thing with sport is I'm not so big on watching sport, although that has its own function and that is part of what makes it what it is. I am more interested in the internal part of it. What happens when you engage in sport or activity exactly.
Yes.
So
And I'm sorry, go.
run with
Finish
it,
off.
man. Run with it.
You said so many amazing things there, Dennis. The first thing that I just want to point out for everybody listening is Dennis has talked about his consistency with physical activity throughout his life and how when things kind of conspired against him with COVID, taking away your 3 gyms down to 0, what did you do? You reacted with creativity, you reacted with like adaptation, you adapted with a subjective, personalized answer to an objective set of facts. And it's striking to me that you're also curious, exploratory in the world of ideas, right? Like to me, there's this great symbiosis between the two. And it's actually what I talked about last episode when I had Brent from the Aiming Up podcast on. And we talked about the truth, the nexus of truth with both sport and philosophy. And you've got to be sort of like courageous to go explore in both. And so, what I really want to highlight from what you said to the people that they're listening is sport has tremendous and deep power when we utilize it as a tool for self-discovery, and that's probably its most powerful function
One.
because because what does it do? It channels us towards a truth that's inside of us, concealed, but then immediately understood once expressed. Like I know the truth when I am done a 100-meter sprint. Pardon me. And the truth is, I hurt. The truth is, my lungs burn with
And
lactate.
yeah, and you're burning brighter than you do with 90% of your time. Is you that's you get these moments, these periods of time when you're engaged in something like that and on a physical level that you can push your limits. There's something that happens where that's to me, that's one of those periods where I'm most alive, where it's like
Mm.
fully expressed, I'm fully here. It's like this is life, this is great. People, yeah, that exactly that. It's like people act like going to the gym or working out or exercising is a drudgery or something. It's like that's actually just the opposite of that. You're running to get to that point where you're living as fully as you can. It's like, this is it. It shuts off a lot of the crap and it slaps you right in the face. It's a very Zen thing. It's like, boom, I'm here. I'm in it. I'm in it.
Yes.
I'm in it. And
Uh,
I love that. And I mean, that's life to me. That's like, that's what it's about. That's what I want.
It's that essence. It's that
Yeah.
essence. And to sort of piggyback off to the philosophers that you mentioned, you talked about Descartes and you talked about Marshall McLuhan. Marshall McLuhan is, man, that guy is amazing and super
Mhm.
smart. And I think you posted that you replied to something that I mentioned on Twitter with that Marshall McLuhan quote. And when you said that, I think I DM'd you within like 1 second. I was like, oh, we have to talk about this on the podcast. Like that man wasn't meant to live at the speed this
At the
sorry
speed of light is what he
at
said.
the speed of
You
light.
know,
Like, oh,
basically through electronics, and what is it doing to warp us? And there's parts of us that are there's parts of us that are shrinking and decaying, and I think that's a big portion of why there's a problem with society in terms of people getting along with each other, and why we're so polarized. We're one or zero, one or zero.
mm,
We're polarized. And it's like, no, 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 no. There's a lot of in between there. There's a lot of gray, and there's a lot of, like when you're sitting here, you can say, blah, 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 blah. Okay, if you're sitting in a room with me, it's not going to be that, because there's the physicality of it. There's the humanness of it, and we've got to keep that connection and activity, sport, working out, whatever you want to call it. And that there's, that's got so many divisions as well. It's like when you think of, for me, I think of sport is, and you're the professor, so grade me on this. I see sport as an outgrowth or a thing that is part of the human impulse, one, to play, to learn, to play at things, not make everything a life and death situation. Because as you bring up a tribe, as you bring up the children in the tribe, you teach them through play things that are not as fully consequential as if it's real. You do that, and see, sport does that. You get that, and then there's also the going back. I guess typically what most people might relate to as far as the idea of sport was the Greek idea. Back in the good old days, the Greek uh, concept of how important sport was in keeping, having strong and capable people, having that ability, but that's also linked to their ability to survive. So sport, it's like I forget. Somebody once said that about the battle, about battles and things like that. They were born on the fields of Eden. The You learn things in sports, also a reflection or a way for people to see. It's a battlefield. So those two things coming together, play and the reality of working in a team and having that, those things come together. And then what we have had, then it evolves and it comes into sport. And it's like, okay, here's what we can do. We can teach all these different things through this venue, through this ability. We can teach people how to work together. We can show people how to, we have goals. We keep score. That's a big thing with sport. You keep score. You time it. There's measure. What can't be measured, it can't be managed. You've got to measure things in order to be able to control them. You got to be able to do that, and that's important.
yeah. You get an A grade on that. You get an absolute
Okay.
A grade.
Thank you. Thank you.
Uh,
That's what I was shooting.
yeah. What makes sport such a unique cultural and activity, and I think unique amongst human cultural activities, is that it is at the same time both objective and subjective.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
In totality, right? So I can't have sport if we don't keep score. But the true value of sport is beyond the score,
Exactly.
right? It's this deep
Exactly.
is this deep
It's a
paradox.
there's
It's
a
this deep paradox.
yeah.
1,000%. And
There's a first principle to me is that life is there are paradoxes. It's there are dichotomies that no one size does not fit all. It just doesn't work that way.
and here's where we can bring Descartes back into this. Descartes don't want no paradoxes. We gotta
Exactly.
solve the like if it's a paradox and I can't solve it, I might as well disregard it and
Yeah.
ignore it because it's
Yeah.
not allowing me to know anything of certainty in the world. Like Descartes is important because he is the one who, as you mentioned before, he separates
Right.
mind and body. It's known as a dualist understanding of a
Hmm.
human, that we are a separate mind and a separate body, which is diametrically opposed to that Greek ideal of embodiment, which is a body and soul in unison, right? A
Mensa
body and a mind.
corpore sana, a sound mind and a sound body, seeing that almost as a totality.
Correct.
But
Correct.
that's the problem with language is when you start to speak about things, you have to split them off and you have that. It's like, well, you said, it's like, well,
Yeah.
yeah, I said, but words change in context. You have to take
Yes.
things in context. You can't just say, well, you said freedom. It's like, well, yeah, so that doesn't mean anything goes. Sorry. It
That's,
doesn't.
yeah.
Over two there, but that's how that's just kind of what people do, and that's what language does. It does that. It also parses and puts you into positions. A very Cartesian kind of setup. It does that.
Yep.
Uh,
So it's like, for Descartes, it doesn't matter how I feel about the way I ran. The only thing that matters is how fast and
the
far I went.
time.
Like that's
Yeah.
all that. That's the
Right.
only thing that we can know for certainty. It's like an epistemological claim, and
Right.
epistemology is
Right.
that's a fancy just word for how we know things or
Yeah.
how we ascertain things to be
Yes.
true. And Descartes set up the modern world in the sense that the only things that we are going to be know are true are things that can be observed, recorded, measured, and then predicted, which is
Right.
effectively the scientific method, which is it's a wonderful method, but it's not truth. Like it's not the sense of the what the outcome is truth. And anybody who is
That's a very subtle, fine point.
but it's one of those things where if we just look at the history of science, it's obvious. Like Newton discovers gravity, and then Einstein determines that Newton was wrong, right? And then Einstein's like, well, I'm probably wrong. And then somebody else came and was like, no, actually,
Well,
Einstein was right. Like,
that's kind of the thing of science. Science is always wrong. That's what it does.
yes, yeah.
That's what
The way
it
I
does.
used,
It's
yeah,
always trying to prove itself wrong. That's what it's
correct.
trying to do.
It's
But the thing about Descartes that strikes me as well is when you talk about like the time is more important than what's going on inside. I think that leads to sometimes a way of viewing things where the end justifies the means, and it's like it's creating it's creating a conflict there where at what point does winning, like, what do you sacrifice? Is it worth everything? You know,
mm,
including your honor, including, that's one of the, going back to the embodiment part of it is like you've got the embodied knowledge, but you also have embodied virtues and embodied vices that come out in sport. If you cheat, that's not, you win, and you may get the accolades and you may get it, but that whole thing is like, um, you cheated. It doesn't count. To the man in the mirror, it doesn't count, and you know that. You see that, and you know that. And so there's that whole with that kind of like I say, the end justifies the means. There's a certain point where I think that is an offshoot of that very strict and positivist kind of point of view, scientific
Mm,
point of view that, if we get there, then it doesn't matter how many people fell off the edge, we got there. It's like, well, no, that's too simplistic, too straightforward. Um, but that's just me. I always have that that mix in my head. It's very hard for me to come into an absolute because
yeah.
it's that yin yang thing. You got yin and yang, and then there's that little dot in the middle of the yin, or the very, and
Yeah.
it's always carrying a little bit. I'm not sure about that. That's
Yeah.
the thing.
And that the yin yang itself is a paradox. Like the symbol
Yeah.
itself is a paradox, which is why, like, I don't want to, if I'm from a Western rationalist modernist perspective, positivist, right?
Hmm.
Positivism being essentially this idea that we can transfer the process of science to know the natural, biological, chemical world around us to this. We can do the exact same thing with humans and the
Yeah.
way they
Oh yeah.
interact with each other and
Right.
how they act in the world. It comes from Auguste Comte, and it created the whole idea of social science, which
Yeah.
I'm a humanities guy, and I think social science is a bunch of garbage.
Hmm.
I don't think it works. I don't think it exists. Like, I don't think you can do it. And when you talk about science as a process of knowledge destruction, that's exactly what it is. Science doesn't produce knowledge; it tells me what's false.
Yeah. The whole Karl Popper thing, the falsification thing. That's what you're doing is like you're saying, okay, this doesn't work. That's what we found. That's what we know. This doesn't
Yep.
work. You don't
Yep.
jump to the conclusion that oh, it's always going to be this. This is the answer, and
Yes.
I mean, from everything we see, uh, everything is in flux. So why would you come?
So many big time words come out of your mouth. I love this. Flux is one of my favorite words. It's a giant 19th century. It's a giant 19th century term, and I'll come back to that when we eventually find our way back to Marshall McLuhan. I'll bring the flux idea. I'll bring the flux idea back in too, because it has something to do with speed. It has something to do with presence. It has something to do with communication.
Oh, good. I'm
But
glad I said that. Explore that. Explore that.
I want to close off this other thought
Oh, okay, okay. Where were we?
on oh my gosh, we're kind of all over the place. This is what's so much fun about philosophy. It's like, who cares where we are? We're
Oh,
just in
yeah,
it.
yeah,
We
yeah.
are in we're in it. We're in the swirl, and we don't necessarily need to come to resolutions or conclusions. We're just probing understanding and
Yeah,
exploration.
yeah.
And this
That's
is amazing. So I'll do the flux thing right now, but
yeah,
here's an idea that I've long thought about. When we're trying to think about what's the role of sport, what's the utility of sport, that yin and the yang?
yeah.
That curvy line that separates the white and the black? That's sport. Sport is the line. Sport's the line between those two. It's the mediating process between the objective and the subjective, between the rational and the irrational, between the feel and the
I
fact.
love it. I love it.
It's the moderating line in between the
That's
two,
great.
which is
Chaos and
why
order. Chaos and order.
chaos
Yeah.
the chaos of an ice hockey match only makes sense within the confines of the
Because
ordered rules
order.
that allow the game to exist in the first place. Sport mediates these two seemingly distinct opposite poles of experience, but brings them together into a harmonious whole, which then gives us truth. Obviously, it gives us the truth
Yeah.
because we're not too in one or the other. We found the proper harmony between the two. So
I like
that's a
I like
I knew you would like that. I'm like, I have to
yeah.
get that part out, but it's like, which of these other parts? Okay, now we'll do the flux thing. We'll
Yeah.
do the flux thing, and I'll bring us back to Marshall McLuhan,
Yeah, yeah. Let's go there.
particularly as a direct response to people like Descartes and Auguste Comte and positivism and objective, way over subjective. Whoo! This is when we get to come back. This is the return. Let's see if I can do this.
Hmm.
Okay. Humans weren't meant to live at the speed of light. Marshall McLuhan, quote number 1. Marshall McLuhan quote number 2, perhaps his most famous quote, and the one that everybody should like just memorize and meditate on for the rest of their lives. The medium is the message. The medium is the message. So it's not what's on my TV, it's the TV. It's not what's coming through my radio, it's the radio. It's not what I'm reading on print, it is print, right? It's not so much the content, but it is the intention and the overall kind of, I don't even know, like energy. Like when I have a conversation with you through a screen, it's right. Totally different than the conversation you and I would have if we were in the room together, but it's also totally different than the conversation we'd have on a telephone where I couldn't see you.
Yes.
They're all different, and they all, just the fact that you can see me moving my arms like this is an expression that is like completely unique to this kind of a medium where I'm in this little box and this purple outline comes up when I'm talking and you can see it.
Flat thing that's moving around of images on this thing. I can't reach out and grab your thumb.
Nope.
It doesn't work like that.
I'm an animated avatar.
Yeah.
We're animated avatars having a conversation, which no matter what we talk about, that determines the conversation. That determines the meaning of the conversation. Alrighty. So if sport is the medium, what the heck is the message? If sport's the medium, so it doesn't matter what I do. It doesn't matter if I lift weights. It doesn't matter if I run a 100-mile race. It doesn't matter if I do CrossFit. It doesn't matter if I just do a 5K park run and I walk the whole 5K. It doesn't matter what I do. It matters that I'm doing physical stuff. It matters that I'm doing physical stuff with the intention of just doing the physical stuff. Like when you say, I enjoy sport because of the inner knowledge that's revealed, that to me signifies that you are internally motivated. The reason you do it is not externally driven. It's right. You're not posting. You have some really sweet videos. You've got like this. You have like almost like these medieval weapons that you sometimes like. Yeah, it's like you've almost got like the mace and the ball, and you're swinging it around as if you're about to go like smash into some 13th century halberds. You know what I mean? Like halberdiers, right? But you're, I know, it's like, but you're not doing that for social media credit or to gain followers or to get, like, you're doing that because you enjoy exploring different ways of moving your body that are difficult, that force you to sweat, that raise your heart rate, that make your muscles ache and cry, but that you find artistic and expressive and creative joy just in moving.
Yeah,
right?
It's the being in that. In it.
The movement is the message, right? The movement is the message. So what the heck is the message? Slow down. Get into the present moment.
Yeah, be here. Be here now. Be in it.
Be in it.
Yeah.
Be in it. And
be in your life, not in your head. Be in your life. Be in it. That's the whole. That's
Descartes. Descartes tells us to live inside our head. He says rationality, measurement, that is the world. That is reality. Live inside your head. The mind is superior. He says the mind is superior to the body. The body is this clunky utility. It's like a Jeep. Like the Jeep just is meant to get banged around and get me to where I need to go. But the driver, the driver is the thing. And then it's just like, the driver's nothing without the Jeep, bro. The driver can't go anywhere without the Jeep. Anyways, so it's like it.
There is no Jeep. That's the thing. It's like one thing. It's you. This is one
me.
Thing. You know, that separation is. That's why some of the things that I do, that I enjoy, have an edge of a physical cost to it when you step out of that. When you start to bifurcate and you turn, you're in your brain all of a sudden, that thing is going to come and clip you. It's like, so it impels you to stay in the zone. You've got to do that. That's those are the things that appeal to me. Although, just as an aside, one of the things that I like to do is, once again, it goes back to the whole idea that use it or lose it kind of thing, is like to, every quarter, is to do some skill acquisition, right? Is to find something and, no matter what it is, find something because there's that effort involved. And in that when you're in that learning place, learning, that's where your adaptation takes place. That's where you stay young. That's where you stay alive. That's where growth happens. And if you don't push your, don't, do hard things. It's like push yourself. It doesn't have to be 90%, life or death. Just enough to where you're uncomfortable. Just enough. If you're that much, then you're in that zone, and it's you're epigenetically you're affecting things. You're
Mm.
affecting things. Just recently, I started a new one. It's called rope flow. Are you familiar with that?
Yes, I am. Absolutely.
That stuff has got me intrigued. I've been doing it now for about 2 weeks, but it's the same sort of thing where you're swinging things and stuff, and it doesn't have the same impact as a mace or something like that. But it does. It has that inness to it where you can go there and you can. It's not that you shut your brain off. It's that your brain and your body and everything they align themselves where you basically you remove that false separation that's been put there. It just kind of dissolves that, and then before you know it, it's like you're in one place. It's not like you're turning your mind off and you're just a dummy and on a robot or whatever. You're not doing
Mhm.
that. You're actually feeding your mind because you're doing that. You're making it work, but it's just not in a analytical, you know prefrontal way. It's a different way that it's working. And I'm a big fan of that. I enjoy that type of activity. And I think it's good. I think it's beneficial. I think if more people did more physically active things, it's not so much, I mean, that's just such a huge push when it comes to health and everything like that. I understand that. And when it becomes, mating strategies, whatever you want to say. There's all that's involved. I get that. But just on that intrinsic side again, is just to become more fully human. Movement is essential. You never really know yourself fully until you have embodied it, until
Mhm.
you really feel that. And I'm going back to well, I mean that'd be circular. Anyway, so that's I still I'm not clear on flux.
Yeah, that's all
But
good.
you
We'll
get
get we'll get there.
okay.
Right? Because what you're describing, right? What you're describing is the importance of play to sport. Play is an all encompassing activity where the outside world and the rationality of my brain melt away. And I'm
Mhm.
ensconced in the present in full enjoyment and in full, almost like reverence of the activity that I get to engage in
Yeah.
this deep fashion. It's like you ever watch a kid play and you will know that it is the most serious thing that they are doing all day.
Yeah.
Like your kid is playing with like a doll or an action figure and you say, guess what? It's bedtime, right? And you rip him out of play world. What's the reaction?
Yeah. It's
Hell on earth,
right.
screaming, throwing things, tears, right? Like Playworld is serious. Playworld is real serious,
Yeah.
right? And the thing with flux was a word that was used throughout we'll call it like the long 19th century, basically industrialization, right? So people go from living like an agrarian lifestyle. 95% of people are subsistence farmers, right? Like you
Right.
basically you got your little plot of land, you grow kind of enough for yourself. Whatever you have extra, you can sell, right? That's how most people live. You're governed by the seasons. There's like a rhythmic way of life. It's hard and difficult, but there's an informality and there's a natural flow and a natural
Yeah.
rhythm to that lifestyle that people become habituated to.
Yeah. It's very
Industrialized,
organic.
it's
There's
very
a
organic
it's
and
to it. Yeah.
and so the Marshall McLuhan quote, we're not meant to live at the speed of light. Let's take like a city. Oh, I'm moving to Chicago. Let's take a city like Chicago. Chicago's a little backward town. Is not very big, right? It's just kind of this port on the west edge of Lake Michigan. Industrialization happens. It becomes the factory center of the entire Midwest.
Yeah.
It grows in population from like, 10,000, 15,000 people to like hundreds of thousands of people, a million people in like 20 years. It's just one example. This happens all over the Western world. People stream into the cities. And what's the city now dominated by? It's dominated by the clock. Hey, I got to get to work. I work 12-hour shifts at this factory. I got to punch in. I got to punch out. I got to catch the trolley to get me there on time. Everything is dominated.
Fuck, I'm hungry.
Everything now is dominated by the tick, tick, tick of the clock. And guess what? I also I don't have access to anymore. Green spaces, like nature, this field idea, right? And it's at this same time that sports, in the idea of the ancient Greeks, are re-emerging into the West. Descartes was kind of like this final death blow for sport, because it's like anything physical is bad and anything related to the mind is great. You can see that playing out in, say, like the Puritans, the people who came across and founded America, and they're like no sports on Sundays laws, like they're like the blue laws. And like, hey, if you're not doing something productive, like you're kind of, like sports okay for a child, but an adult should never play sport. An adult should never play sport. That's a waste.
We should be serious. Be serious.
You should be serious. Play is the distraction. Work is serious. And it's like, no, actually play is serious, because play is where I know myself. Play is where I learn. Play is where I grow. Play is where I adventure. Play is where I explore. Play is where I feel alive, where I feel human, because my spirit is alive and my mind, my rational analytic mind is. Nobody comes into play world with a spreadsheet. And when somebody does, it's like, you play weird. And that person's like, but this is how I do it, right? And you're like, okay.
The worst thing in the world is when you're when you're playing and somebody comes in with that mentality. It's
Right?
like, you ruined it. You just burned it down, man. And what are you doing? Leave it. Go away. I want to play.
Right.
Leave it alone.
So flux
That's
is this
funny.
word that was used in the 19th century to describe everything is being taken over by speed and we don't know what's happening. Like it's chaos. We live in chaos because our whole conception of the rhythm of life and who we are, like we just don't even, like I used to live in a village and there's 1,000 people in my village and I knew everybody and I never left 50 miles from my village. Right. I might have had a small life, but it made sense. It was meaningful and I had a place in it. Yeah. And I was connected through the generations and through the land. Now I'm an immigrant into a city. I've only been here for 5 years. I don't know anybody. I don't know my neighbors. We don't share customs. We don't share traditions and heritage. Like, how are we supposed to figure this thing out? And
at the same point in time, at the same thing is at that same time, you're part of a global village now, and you are no longer Jordan of this village. That's the guy that runs in the morning and does what he does. There's everybody. It's the whole world. It's like, so you lose your identity, and I think that's part of why you can only, for me, identity. It's what is that? It's like the tribe thing. It's your identity within your tribe is more important, and that's how you find out who you are, is within that 150 people, not in the global thing. And it's like anything else. It gets diluted, and so you have to go to more and more and more extremes and do things that are just more radical to get that 15 seconds of fame. And you link your humanity, your identity to that one, getting that, but that's the trade-off when we do just blindly accept technology advancement, progress. Like when you're talking, that's what struck me when you were talking about the flux situation and how people were basically going into the industrialized world, and how it uprooted everything, and it just uprooted stuff. Do you think that we're standing on the cusp of something like that right now?
we're in it. We're not on the cusp. We're in it. We're in the information age. We're into the digital revolution.
Yeah.
So what's so if they lived by flux in the 19th century, we live by hyperflux because we haven't even come to grips with the changes of industrialism yet, and now we're into a
Yeah.
new epoch where
Yeah.
change happens even that. So it's like in
It's
the
accelerating.
in seven yeah, it's like in 17 whatever in 1775 I could only go as fast on land as a horse could take me.
Right.
By the end of the 19th century, there's trains and there's cars. Okay, that's great, right? Now, in the 20th and 21st, we had the first airplane, right, in 1903. And look at what Elon Musk is doing with space rockets right
Right.
now, right? Like 110 years later. Like,
Right.
we don't even. And then you think about how young the internet is.
That whole shift
We're,
happening there. How do we catch up to that? I
we
mean, for
can't.
me, it's
We can't catch up. We cannot catch up. We're not meant to.
it's a
Marshall
move.
McLuhan tells us we're not meant to.
Yeah, that's kind of like we've opened Pandora's box. And it's like "Ugh, there's a lot of stuff, but how do you can't stuff it back in. So
Nope.
how is humanity? How are we going to bridge that? And it's not necessarily that whatever comes out on the other side, what people do evolve into with this symbiotic relationship with the information age. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
it's not necessarily that that's going to be a bad thing or a dehumanized thing, but we're in this space right now where it's like we're a kid that's growing up and his feet grew really big really fast, and he's trying to figure out, how do I walk with these huge monster feet at the bottom of my legs now, because I was used to these and all of a sudden I've got these big clunky things. And I think that's what kind of whipsaws us socially. A
Yep.
big part of that is that we just don't know how it fits yet. We haven't and it doesn't give us time. We
Yep.
Right now, I mean, left and right. The other day I was sitting here and it blew my mind. And I'm a dinosaur, I'm from a whole different century. And I'm sitting here and I had ordered something from Amazon. And I remember when I was a kid, and then here we go, the old cracker, the old stories, when I was a kid, uphill both ways. The I remember buying something from the back of a comic book, and I had no idea when it was going to show up. It took 3 months to get this. It was Charles Atlas. It was the Charles Atlas thing. I saved up my pennies. I sent off for Charles Atlas because when I grew up, well, not when I grew up, I am a small person. And so growing up, that whole physicality, see, that's one of the things is did I did I decide, or was I channeled into the physicality part of my life because of my size and my situation? I was a small kid. In high school, ninth grade, I was under 5 foot, under 100 pounds. That's tough. When you're a young boy, that's tough. So I was always kind of into that, the physical, I gotta learn my judo, and I'll have the secret weapon and that kind of stuff. But just the whole idea, and here I'm sitting here and I order and I look on my phone and it tells me it's going to be here tomorrow. Amazon's going to drop this off. It's like, you mean I can't get it now? It's like transporter speed. What do you mean I have to wait a whole day? But just what that does to your mind and your whole sense in space, like something that's one of the things that I think people have a problem with, is when they get into the physical things, is that they want instant coffee. And you got to grind the beans in the physical world. You can do some things that can accelerate it, but you got to do that, and it takes time. It takes time and effort and consistency, and we're just, like I said, you mean I can't just put it on my phone and have it here tomorrow. I can inject plastic into my arms so they look like,
Yeah,
oh, look at that. It's like
I know.
that's part of the problem is that those kind of psychological adjustments that we have to make, that in some cases the speed of light is actually where we live. This is the speed of light. This is where we live. But the animal, the old dinosaur in me is like, what am I looking at? Fire, fire, fire. It's like, what is this?
Yeah.
I think that that's part of what, and it's not so much for me, but going forward, like, especially like for your children, I really think about that a lot is, what world are they stepping into? And it's not even so much, I'm boomer. So, we get a lot of credit for a lot of good stuff, right? But now the stuff is falling on you guys because you are in that spot. You're in the, men in full. You're in that spot. And the children, your children, what world are they coming into where, like, say you've got a 7, 8-year-old child, when they're in their 30s, how will this acceleration, what will it mean? I mean, there's no tell. That's that whole thing about, would you want to live forever, um, or a really long time? The only thing that would really, the thing about that for me is not that I want to live and instantiate me, who I am, for that a longer time. I just thought I'd never want to die. It's not that. It's just I'm so doggone curious about where this is going. It's like, oh man, I would love to see what it's going to be in 100 years. I would just love to see it. Just what are we going to have? People with 3 arms, or what, what is it? Because you can see we're on the cusp of some things. I mean, we are changing physicalities. We're doing things that just, it's unbelievable. And then you've got somebody like Elon Musk that's going to put us on Mars. And it's like, that the person or the thing that's going to survive on Mars is not going to be a human being that survives on Earth. We're not going to do that. We're going to change the human to fit there. We're going to
Yep.
make that work there. That's how I see it. I don't see me getting in a suit and then we're going to do this and I'm on Mars now. No, 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 no. That thing that lives there will have come and sprouted from this nest, but it's a big cuckoo. It's not what we think it is. I don't see us being the same type of species. I also see that we're in that place right now where the species is doing this. We're not doing this anymore. We're doing this. You're going to have two or even a plurality of types of living, transhumans, whatever, uh, cyborgs, the whole thing. I think it's coming. I mean, it's just like Jules Verne with the submarine. You look at science fiction now and what they talk about, it's like, yeah, that might be
Yep.
here.
Maybe.
Uh,
It's not up to the historian, which I'm a trained historian, to project and predict the future. But I will say that one of the things that motivated me during, the pandemic, and that helped me find the resolve and the strength to move through a period of chaos and unknown, where you would wake up the next morning and you would, especially, I'm living in Canada and things are just kooky, very kooky. It's like you don't know what's happening the next day. It's like which law is coming down on you? What person is now saying like you don't deserve health care, or you got to pay this tax, or now you're not allowed to go here, or we're going to start triaging you? And
yeah,
it's like, well, this is interminable. How are you supposed to live when you don't know what's coming every
yeah,
single day? And the thing that the thing that I meditated on was, as the world gets more insane, you retreat deeper inside of yourself.
yeah,
As the world gets more insane, out of my control would be another way to think about it. As the world as the world moves so fast that I'm so far outside of being able to harness, control, or even almost like hang on in a positive or productive way, it's not about what's that next piece of technology I need to get. It's about fortifying the sense of identity of who
100%.
you are so that when big things come to challenge you, you've
Still
got a
got,
rock solid
you still got,
foundation
yeah,
of self. And
yeah,
now going back to sport as a process of self discovery and truth, perhaps maybe the greatest place where we can start that journey of self knowledge and self discovery. The medium is the message. Humans aren't meant to go at the light of speed. My suggestion for people is you're not in control of any of the things in terms of the progress of time or the arc of history or any of you
yeah.
are not in you, even somebody like Elon Musk who would be like he might be at the vanguard of this, right? He's not in control.
No,
Nobody is in control of the future. What am I in control of? My own
yeah,
life. And if I know myself deeply, truly, courageously, and honestly, well, guess what? Whatever the future holds for me, I'm going to move through it. I'm
yeah,
going to move through it. So my answer is like, how do we deal with the flux? Go run. Go run all the time. Go lift weights all the time. Go find the physical activity that you want to play in, that you are passionate about, that you're creative in, where you can shut the stupid rational mind off for just a minute and let the spirit come alive.
yeah.
When you
Work
say I feel when you say I feel alive doing it, I hear my spirit is awakened.
right.
Because the rational part of me says I don't care about the spirit. I don't care about willpower. I don't care about irrationality. I care about objective, what I can measure, what's true, so I can have a cost benefit analysis on a spreadsheet so that I can then
Right.
deduce the proper course of action that if any other individual was put into my situation, they would
Mhm.
obviously make this decision too, because it's the objectively right it's the objective right decision, and that's just BS. We are not I'm not an object. I am a subject. I'm a
You're not a
person. I'm
mechanism.
an
You're
I'm
not.
an I'm an
Yeah,
individual.
that's a mechanistic point of view. Is that whole thing that like, oh, I'm a machine. No, you're not. No, you're not. You're more than a machine. A machine is limiting you. You don't put yourself in that place. You're more than that. So much more. But that whole point of view about controlling what you can is a very, going back to philosophy, it's a very stoic position. It's like that, and that, see, this is not the first time that humans have faced chaos. We got a taste of it. Well, actually, we got kind of we had the small chaos, but we never really have had. And I mean, as caveat, I'm talking from who I am. Western man, that kind of a situation. I know in the world there is raw chaos happening. I understand that. But this was one of those situations where things were kind of out of your control. Like it's like there's a lot of spinning things, and it's like, okay, what do I do? And then that whole stoic thing is you control what you can, and that's it. That's what you can do. That's it. That's the extent. But see, to me, that is in its own way is like a seed that is a catalyst to the control of the more broader thing. Is if every person carries that marble that's in their pocket, then that's when change, it's systemic. It starts to happen like that, from the bottom up, you know. At
Yeah,
least that's
yeah,
my point of view about it. And that's like I feel like, instead of feeling like I'm just being selfish, I'm self-centered, that, oh no, I need to go do this. I need to wave a flag. I need to protest. And I am more, like you say, for me, I'm more internally involved. I need to work on that part that inside of me is what I can control. I need to make that as solid and as firm as I can, and something that's consistent and reliable, and you know can run to true north. It's like
yeah.
principle. It's, this is what I want to do. I can work on that. I can't change what the deep state is going to do or something. What?
Mm.
you know okay,
Yeah.
I do kick in on it every now and then. I'll say something, but it's okay. I know I'm just doing that. It's not going to affect any real change. The real change is can only be affected internally. To me, I stop doing things or I start doing things, and that the weight of that and that's what makes a difference going forward. Is it's like a tide. It pushes itself. It's not like you're gonna. I guess there are people. That's what power is about. They want to be at that point where they can affect change to a lot of people and a lot of things by pulling the lever that they decide they want to do, and that might be one of the big attractions to it. But that's never been something for me. I've never been driven by that, so uh, I don't go there.
No. And you see people getting all confused about where they should be placing their energy if they want to be good people,
Right.
right? Like, how do I know if I'm being a good person? Number one, if you ask yourself that, like, you're likely a good person because
Yeah.
it's sort of like and there's a lot of philosophy and religious scripture and spirituality that effectively locates goodness in the intention of the heart, right? Like the intention of the heart is kind of where goodness comes from, and it obviously has to be related to outcomes, but it's like that's the primary mover, right? The primary mover is what happens here. So when you say like from the ground up, I often say from the heart on out.
Yeah.
I say from the heart from the heart on out, right?
Which is an
And
interesting thing right there. That's a different modalities of like even how you frame the same expression, the same thought, but how you frame it is like I say from this and you say that, but we both know what we're saying.
yeah,
You know?
it's funny. I was actually having this conversation with one of my coaching clients about the distinctions between balance and harmony, and he was talking about balance from the Buddha, and I was saying like I like that, but I think the word balance skews in our Western minds. And we should use an Aristotelian ideal like harmony. And it's like if Buddha and Aristotle got into a room, they would just 100% agree. They're
Yeah,
just sort of using they're
I've
just sort of
always
using a different
thought that
they're
even
just sort of using a different word, and the point isn't like, oh, Buddha's bad and balance is dumb. It's like what Buddha is saying about balance is what Aristotle is saying about harmony.
mhm,
But when the Western mind hears balance, they think 50-50, or they think like
right.
this teetering, very fragile thing
Yeah,
that's like on one fulcrum, and that like anything on one side or the other makes it topple. So it's balance is really this either fragile idea or this like almost like unrealistic division into equal parts.
right.
Whereas harmony is things in proper proportion to each other, which
Right.
is like, oh, I like that. So you make a really great semantic point there. And philosophy almost always just devolves into semantics because
It
if we
does.
want to understand,
It
this is one of the reasons why people hate philosophy is because
does.
they think, oh, eventually we're just going to get down to arguing definitions. It's like,
Yeah.
well, yeah, you have to. Otherwise we can't have a conversation. Otherwise we can't figure out truth. Like it's the same thing, and this is why sports are so cool. And maybe we'll try to figure out a way to come to some sort of a landing spot here. Not
Right.
necessarily in this point, but just in the next little part of the conversation. You know, what do we talk about? The chaos and order of hockey, right? Like I require the rules. I require the rules, right? Like we cannot play a game if we don't first decide what are the rules of the game we're about to play. We can't have fun. We can't cooperate together. We can't figure out something new, right? Unless we get on onto the same page.
Big lesson. That's such a big point. Is that uh, we we got this romantic idea that think outside the box and I'm a free spirit and all this. It's like, well, things work under constraints. You do that because that's how it works. You don't. There is no hockey if there are no rules. It's knocking things around with sticks. It's not hockey. And it that is like where I think we get this, like I say, this romantic idea of, and not to denigrate people or anything, but they're half baked. It's like you've got to. put some effort into it and think about it before you think that before you fall on one side or the other. Give it some time, analyze it, think about it, even maybe sit down and write some words plus and minus, kind of do that. Just don't assume that because your favorite star or your favorite celebrity has this worldview or whatever, that that's the way I'm going because it makes me feel good, that's the way it is. It's like, no, something you have to have boundaries. You don't, an organism cannot exist without a wall. You have to have boundaries. You've got to have that. So that's part of where we had this disjunction with the words. That's where
Yes.
words start to blur things. It's like you think you know what you're saying, but you're not really saying that. And you're going to die on that hill, but you don't really even know what you're standing on. You've got to slow down,
Slow
and
down.
and not knee jerk into this position. And it's like it's more about uh, to me, it's more about a lot of times as I've gotten older, it's more about boxing things in and
Hmm.
controlling and setting boundaries and not being so absolute about things. It's a weird, it's a paradox. It's that dichotomy of things that you do
Yeah.
both. You do both at the same
Yeah.
time and not. There's no solid place that you get to land on and squat and say, okay, I got the answer. This is it. A
This.
final answer. It's like, no, not really. It keeps moving, and you have to put work into it. You got to do the work. You can't just sit there and say, I'm done. Now I know 12, 4 sets of 12 is the best way to grow. And, it's like, wait a minute. It's like when that's one thing about coaching. One of the biggest things, and I've seen it happen many times, and this is coaching on a personal level, not coaching in team sport, but on a more individual level, uh, is that so frequently the coach brings his or her agenda and not the client and not the subject. It's like they bring something. I've seen this so many times, and it's just one of those super irritating thing. You have somebody New Year's, right? New Year resolution. They come into the gym. They drop down for a whole year. They're in it to win it. Here we go, and they're heavy. And so what does the trainer do? He runs them through the same thing that he does everybody else. It's like, well, wait a minute. In the first place, that person should probably not be doing burpees. Okay. Don't do that with somebody that's 40 pounds overweight. Get them to show up and get them to walk. That's enough. Get that started so you get that momentum going. And it's like, yeah. And then when they start seeing progress in other areas, but that's one of those things. It's like, that's one of my pet peeves, uh, where that not thinking that you have a solution and that it's written in stone and that this is how, oh, I've got a new client and I'm going to do the basic workout. And here we have, 4 sets of 8 and 4 sets of 8. And then we're going to add 5 pounds every week. What? you know, 5 pounds every week adds up pretty quick. The first one, if I could add 5 pounds every week that I've lifted weights, I'd be lifting the planet. It's like, give me a break. It doesn't work like that. You've got to adjust and pay attention. And that's one again, people get in these, and a coach is an authority, and people get into positions of authority and they short sighted. They don't lift, they quit working. And it's like, no, pay attention to the people that you're trying to get into this. You've got to treat them as a unique individual, not as just another
Yes.
bump in the road here. It's like boom, 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 boom. Oh, I got 14 clients that I work every week. It's like, that's great. And they're all doing the same thing. That's just me. That's one of my pet peeves. I don't know why I went there. It just
I love it. I
came,
love it.
but it's like,
I have to directly respond to that since
yeah,
I am in that space and I've thought about this and why that happens so often. Number one, that is the prime example of turning a subject into an object. You take an individual person and then you reduce them into
exactly.
um, this mechanistic almost vehicle in front of you that just needs to do the rote motions in
Yeah,
order to gain the value. And then it's like, all right, let's think about the person as a subject for a moment.
yeah.
What does somebody who's what does because I've thought about this a lot. It's like I want to help people who struggle to find consistency in the gym but like have not quit on themselves. The person who keeps signing up in January but quitting in February year after year, or oh, I'll do body weight exercises for 2 weeks and then I'm done. Because I was that person. I was that person that like I want to exercise, I want to be fit, I want to be consistent, and it took me 2 years to figure out how to make that happen with lots of false starts in the way.
Yeah.
And this is why I talk about play and why I talk about love, because it's like once you find something you're interested in, like it's easy to be consistent because you just like it, you just like doing it.
Yeah.
And here's specifically what happens with those trainers, because those trainers, they do want to help. That like to think that that person just doesn't care, I don't think is correct. They're just misguided. They're just misguided because they love rote mechanic motions. They love weightlifting. They love progressive overload. They're fitness trainers. They love the gym. So they are assuming, hey, the person coming to me in the gym, they also are going to respond
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
the motions and movements that I love. And here's what that person really needs. It's like what I said, the medium is the message. It doesn't matter what you do, it's that you do something. So,
Right.
what they really need, that specific individual, they need a spiritual coach. They don't need a physical trainer. They need a spiritual coach to teach them how not to quit when they want to quit, how to show up when they don't have motivation. That's what the person who's like hiring a personal trainer when they want to start in fitness, that's what they're after. They're like, teach me not to quit like you. It's not teach me to lift weights like you, or teach me to ride a bike, or teach me to run like you. It's teach me to have the discipline, teach me to have the fortitude, teach me to have the consistency. And then they come back with progressive overload. Go to
Yeah.
this machine. And then the person's like, 2 weeks, you're not talking to me. You're
Yeah.
not resonating inside of what I truly am wanting. But then that person also doesn't know what they really want because they're just told, hey, you know what physical health is for? Or sorry, exercise for? It's just for physical health. Hey, did you know that 70% of Americans are overweight or obese, and that exercise is a great way to not be overweight or obese? Everyone knows that.
Yeah.
Everybody, like we have all the information in the world to tell us to go out and exercise. Everybody knows they're going to live shorter, more miserable, depressing, and despondent lives if they're fat and they're overweight and they can't move and they're chronically inflamed and in pain. Everyone knows that. How many people are doing anything about it? None. No one's doing anything about it because we're not objects and we don't respond to data. We respond to meaning. We respond to passion. We respond to love and purpose and desire and
Hmm.
will, right? So in your specific example, the trainer just needs to say, I want to see you every day for say, I want to see you just show up. And
Show up.
we'll
Yeah.
just do some stuff. We'll see. Let's experiment. Let's see. Hey, do you like cardio? Not really. Do you like resistance training? Great. Do you like HIIT? Do you like powerlifting? Do you like cross? Like it's that first 6 weeks to 2 months should just be creative
Yeah.
exploration and
Yeah.
making sure that you just the showing up is the win, right?
Understanding, yeah, it's showing up. It's just showing up. When you were talking about that, the metaphor that struck into my head was where you have a very rote and scripted sort of training going on, or you have the other person that is actually, like you said, looks into the deeper spiritual aspect of it, and what is it that's really causing the resistance? What's happening there? Uh, Teach a man to fish. You're not the one man is he's just giving them a fish. The one
Yeah.
coach is here's a fish, here's a fish, here's a
No.
fish, and then the other coach is that I'm going to teach you how to fish.
Yeah.
I'm going to instill in you and help open your eyes to what this is about. It's not just getting in there and doing this for,
No.
and then you're done. It's like, no, it's a whole change. It's a, like you say, it's almost a spiritual situation.
Yes, it's like a willpower issue. And like from my own vantage, like, because I've done this, you asked me the very first question was like, what was your inflection point that made you quit the academy and become like an online coach effectively, right?
Mhm.
Um, when I first started out as a coach, what do you think it looked like? It looked like a professor. It looked like
Yeah.
here's a highly structured program. I literally had PowerPoint, dude. I had PowerPoint slides, and I
Yeah.
had like ancient Greek quotes and philosopher quotes, and it was like my first client. God bless my first client. He was really interested in that sort of thing, so it worked. But
It
that is like
works.
the second and third person. I was like, oh, this is I'm just trying to justify myself as an authority. I'm not actually listening to the person and helping them right now. So,
Exactly.
I had some success early on. I had a couple people who unfortunately, like, I just wasn't able to connect with. And that was like a really good calibration mechanism. It was like, okay, what's going on? And I have my own coach for this. And he's just like, it's not about you proving anything. It's about you listening and helping. And
Yeah.
it's like, of course, okay, great. I'm really good at that, and that's why I want to be a coach, anyways. But there's this temptation to just in the coaching space, as you suggest, like to just I know the way. I'm really great at it. Just
There's a
follow
thing.
exactly what I say, and it'll work. And if it doesn't work, you're something wrong with
You have a
you.
problem. Yeah.
Something is not wrong with me and my beautiful system and my beautiful structure, and that's just blah. That's just blah. So I had to directly respond to that coaching thing, and I wanna circle back and I want to end because
Okay.
you and I we could talk about this forever, which is one of the things I love about the people who I bring on is we talk for 90 minutes. Like, did we even get to anything? Like, or did we just scratch the surface in a million different ways? And now we've got all these like shoots where we could fall down into for the next like 10
Well,
hours,
it
which
was
like
not
we're
a
not gonna
problem to solve. This was just something to work with. It's like,
correct.
good.
I'm not interested in a resolution. I'm interested in like maybe arriving back at the place where we
Yeah.
started.
Mhm.
Um, and you said something really important about constraints and boundaries when thinking about, like philosophy and definitions, for example, right? And I want to go back to that idea of sport as the mediating
Yeah.
curvy line in between the black and the white parts on the yin and the yang symbol, right? They allow us to feel the weight and the depth of the subjective, my feeling, my spirit, right? The things that matter and mean something to me that may not mean and matter anything to you, but I'm also forced to recognize my limits and my constraints. So again, it's like if I tell you I'm going to go run whatever, a 5K test, and I'm going to go under 20 minutes, but I hit 21 minutes, guess what? I found out a constraint. I found a boundary. I found a limit to my body that I
Mhm.
can't just subjectively feel my way through. I can't just feel my way to a
Yeah.
sub
Yeah.
25K. Like, I actually have to prove that I did it. I have to prove that I did it. But
Right.
then it's like, well, why do I want to do a 5K? Right? Why do I want to? Is it so I can show off to other people or so I can feel alive in my capabilities and my dynamism, right? That I can force myself to continue to run at a high threshold when every single muscle in my body is saying stop. What? And my mind is saying they're all yelling at you to stop. Stop. And somehow, some way, the spirit comes alive inside me and says, you're not stopping. You're not stopping.
What's wrong with you?
What's wrong with me? Exactly. Exactly. That's
Stop.
why it's this mediator because I get to experience the best of both the
Yeah.
objective and the subject. I'm not lying about the objective. I'm not deifying the subjective.
Right.
They're in proper proportion with each other when
Yeah.
I am training and playing sport internally motivated.
Through that
So
inter
that's the important thing.
through that. Yeah.
If I'm
Like,
internally motivated and I'm playing sport, I get everything. I get the physical health that I want. I get to look great and feel good. I got high energy, right? Like I also have meaning and purpose because I'm engaged in a creative act that means something to me, right? I'm not just consuming stuff. I'm not
Right.
just a voyeur or a spectator. I'm an active participant,
You have
right?
agency. Yeah.
I have agents. Oh, it's another big time word. I have agency. I have direction, right? So I could just yell at everybody forever, like the heart, love, love, internal, internal, internal. But it's like when I actually do that through sport, I live in heaven. I live in a paradise on earth.
You're there.
I'm in it. I'm in the present moment.
Yeah.
Life isn't. I'm not speeding at. I'm not at the speed of light.
Exactly.
I'm properly receiving the message.
Exactly.
And then I get to live it out. And here's the really cool part. And this is why we resonated so obviously with each other. Is you're gonna find others,
Yeah.
and you're gonna inspire other people.
We could go on. That's a whole show in itself, right there. Is just talking about those moments of resonance that you have with people in moments that it's just like, just blows your mind. That
Yeah.
just like, oh wow, that you get it. You know, you get
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's because a
Yeah.
lot of times you are you're lonely. It's a lonely thing sometimes. You don't people you don't always have someone patting you on the back and saying good job and all that. So it's you got that. There's a certain quality there that when you do get somebody that get it, like what we're doing. I mean, it's like we could sit here and talk about this for 8 hours. It would not, this is a campfire talk, you could just sit there forever and go on. And when you get a crew that has that, that's just such a great feeling and just and I know, and see, there's something that resonates there. That is feeding. I don't know what it is. I can't analytically say, parse it out. This is what you're doing. You're working on
Nope.
your compass, blah, blah, blah. No, but there's something in me that is being nourished by that.
Yeah.
That's what I'm here for. This is
That. Yes.
you know that's why I'm
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I'll finish with this. I'll finish with this thought because this is something that came to me last week during a run. Of course, a lot of my really neat ideas,
yeah
wild, wacky, and kooky ideas come to me while I'm in motion, while I'm physically active, which is a big hint to me to keep going and to really dive into
yeah
that connection, right? I say it all the time, the truth is in the training, and it's for all these incredible reasons. I have this received knowledge that always just seems to be transmitting down to me in these sessions. And I got to thinking about, I think a lot about energy waves, for example, right? Like if you buy in with string theory a little bit, it's like we're all waves. Like the entire universe is a series of waves colliding and sticking against each other. And then I got to thinking about like, well, clearly, if I am internally motivated, I'm opening up I'm very big on this idea of opening up the heart too. So if I'm opening up the heart and I'm pouring out the energy that's coming through my heart, we don't have the scientific evidence yet, but it's like, I'm pretty sure science is going to figure out that my heart actually transmits its own signal. And this resonation that you're feeling is that your heart is a transmitter to my signal, and my heart is a transmitter to your signal. And when we connect on the same frequency with our internal motivations that are sort of aligned through our
that's what's
heart,
happening. Yeah,
then we get into a synchronicity with each
yeah,
other.
it's harmonic.
And that sounds woo woo, and that's like vibes and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, science won't prove. But I'm like, my intuition is that science will prove that. And that the weird and wacky idea that I had is that actually the biggest vibration that comes from our heart is sent directly to the sun. And then we get it back because it was a really cold but beautiful sunny day. So I was just thinking about drawing energy from the sun.
Mhm.
And then it's just like, what if my heart was in a direct frequency in terms of energy waves with the sun? And wouldn't that be cool if science actually determined that that was the strongest force? Because I'm a big believer that love is the strongest force in the universe, and love comes from the heart. And then it's like, maybe, maybe maybe it's something like that. I don't objectively have the measurements and the proof, But like, there's part of me that's like, that's only a matter of time before we get there, before we do actually figure out
Yeah,
that
we
that
didn't
there's
even
this pulse.
touch on anything as metaphysical as that, but
No,
there is a whole world that we could have explored there as well.
for sure.
I would tend to be, I mean, we could kind of parse out the language, but I would tend to be more in line with what you're saying in terms of I've had those experiences. That's one experience that's interesting is where you can feel that is where I've run into that, and I don't want to go too long, but it's um, when it's called presence, like when you're on stage or when
Yes.
you're acting or when you're dancing, um, and you can learn to control that. You can learn to do, and that's where it comes from.
Mm.
Yeah. I mean, I've done that. That's where it comes from, and that's presence, and you can tell, you can quiet an audience with that energy. You can bring that out, and that's called stage presence. When they say, "Oh, he has stage presence," that's my experience of it. It's not so much from the physical side. Yeah, yeah. That's
You just nailed me right in the heart. You just nailed me right in the heart because I used to be a musician. I used to play music on stage.
well, there you go. You understand then.
I
You
totally get
know
it.
that moment when that
Yeah.
happens, it's like this
Yeah.
you and that's where it's coming from. It's
Yeah.
not your virtuosity, it's not how big you make the scene or what
Nope.
the line you make. There's something that comes out of you that's a presence, and it's like there it is, and it's an energy, and people receive it. They understand it. It's like, oh, there it is. That's why people will blow you away when you see it. Could be someone just playing a guitar on, a buster somewhere. You're walking through a city and some guy's doing something or doing, and it's like, dude, he's got it. He's got that. He captures you. So, and that's an energy wave. That's not like you say, woo woo. That's just being sensitive to the energy and being aware that that happens. When you see
Yeah.
somebody that does that, they're dialed into something it's not scientific. It's not
No.
scientific, but
No.
it is real. There's a difference between the two things, and it's not totally made up and subjective because you have that resonance. You have that, and it's like this is we're bouncing off of each other here.
Yeah.
I say when you feel an audience go quiet, and it just and or like with stand up comedy. Once you get them rolling and they're rolling, you can see that he's got them in their pocket, and that's
Yeah.
that energy that starts to. You can drive an energy. It's not just the words. It's not the gimmicks. There's an energy that's happening there, and like
Yeah.
we're resonating as a
Yeah.
it's like yeah.
Oh yeah.
So that's not far from my personal experience. What you're saying, and yeah, I've had my own relationship with the sun, so
Yeah, I know. I do. I knew you would appreciate it. That
yeah,
was like the really kooky idea where I'm like, wouldn't that be really cool if that was the truth? I'm like, well, maybe that is the truth. I'm like,
yeah.
I don't know. But
Ancient Egyptian in me, I think.
why not? I
Yeah,
mean, like everybody feels better when they're in the sun, right?
yeah, it all comes from there,
I mean, like what happens when you have 10 cloudy days in a row and then you see a little like the sun was it's like
Which
literally
is
coming through here. It's like the only thing I want to do is feel that. I
yeah,
just want to feel, and it's not like, and I'm a little bit sensitive to this now because we're about to go into winter and it's like my skin is not going to feel the warmth of the sun for a
yeah,
long time. But one of the greatest sensations, physical sensations, is like when I'm going for a run out in the winter and there's sun and I stop and my body's warm. And it's like, get the clothes off. And I want to feeling the warmth of the sun
yeah.
hitting your
Feel
skin.
an inch deep, like going in,
Oh my
penetrating.
gosh.
It's like I love that. I'm a big fan of that. Super
You
big.
know? And
Yeah,
when you think about something like that, you're like, well, maybe our hearts really are tethered powerfully in a magnetic energy spectrum to the sun because we all reverberate so naturally that way. It's just,
Like the speed
can I,
under the sun. I mean,
can I,
it's like the primal energy.
yeah,
You know, of all the
yeah,
different things that there are, that's number one. I
yeah,
mean, that's my view of it. You know, it's
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
number
And
one.
then just to put a little bit of a bow on this, it's like Descartes would say, well, show me the measurement or else I don't care.
Right,
I don't
right.
believe. And then McLuhan would say, that's really cool. Like,
Yeah,
oh, that's really neat. That's really neat how that's how
yeah,
you receive this thing. Right?
yeah.
Because when you talked about stage presence, I'm not like I'm wearing a Garmin, so yeah, I could perceptibly like, oh, there was a tick in my heart rate, or like you could measure the plyo erection on the hair standing up on the back of my neck. Yeah, there's a physical sensation, but I'm telling you right now, I felt something swell inside of me.
Right,
Right? I
right.
felt it. You talked, and all of a sudden, something started to grow inside.
Perfect.
Right in the center, in this sort of like heart gut axis, which is where the ancients actually determined wisdom comes from. Wisdom don't come from up here.
What's
Wisdom lives in here. Intelligence is here, but wisdom is here.
that effect is what I was going for.
Exactly.
That was it. That was presence. I sent presence across to you on this little
And
medium here. That's mind blow. It's like,
yeah, and
geez, how
and
weird.
the objective truth comes through the validity of our experience, but the validity of our experience only matters if I'm willing to tell the truth about all of my other experiences.
Yeah,
Right? So if
yeah,
we're looking to mine experience for truth, which is the type of philosopher I am, I call myself an applied phenomenologist.
yeah.
Phenomenology is philosophy that's defined by the question, how do we experience the world? I'm not
Right.
interested in what's the nature of the world, like a metaphysicist would be interested in
Yeah.
that. I'm interested in how do I as a subject experience the world?
Right.
That's what I'm interested in. But my experiences have to be rooted in some sort of a deeper truth than just my own perception. This is why sport's so incredibly powerful because again, I get it all in
Yeah.
sport. I get the subjective, I get the meaning, I get the value, but then I also get the deep truth of I did it, I didn't do it, I was strong enough, I wasn't fast enough, right? And I think we should probably end, otherwise we'll go forever, which is great.
Yeah.
But
We just go on and on. People will be like, "Oh man, get it over with."
no,
Let's put it.
no, but like if you number one, I never promised any resolutions or conclusions on this podcast. I said that from the very beginning. I'm like, I don't know what we're going to be talking about. I just know it's going to be kind of circular, creative, and explorative, and that we're going to feed
I've
off
had
of
fun.
each other's
I
off
think
of each
some
other's
people will
ideas.
appreciate it. I've had fun with it. This is to me is a typical philosophical conversation. It's like keep it in that
Correct.
level where it's in the higher altitude of the mountain up there. It's up there.
Correct.
Keep it up high, and it's good. And
Correct.
like I say, we didn't solve anything. It's just
The only thing that the only if there's something that I want as an outcome for the podcast, it's I want people who are listening to one appreciate exploration and creativity
Yeah.
as powerful razors towards truth, and to do that with your body. To do that with your body.
Yeah.
So just as we've been open and we've probably said a bunch of wrong things, made a bunch of mistakes, repeated ourselves. Oh, I was going to get to this and then I never went back to it. Okay, that's fine. That's okay. That's like me going out and failing a test. That's like me going up and trying to set a new rep max and like, oh, I didn't get the weight off it. Great. Got to go back to the drawing board. Or it's like, oh, I'm really interested in trying this new kind of exercise called rope flow. What the heck's that all about? I don't even know what I'm doing. Oh, I'm going to look like a total greenhorns and I'll be embarrassed in the first, but that's cool because I'm just having fun and
Yeah.
I'm open.
Starts it.
So, so the outcome that I'm hoping, I think you and I are both going to be inspired to keep doing what we're doing, which is great. But for anybody who's listened, if anybody did actually stay around and listen to the whole thing, kudos to you. Be open, be creative, be exploratory, and recognize that these are powerful ways to know things in the world, and that when we do it in our bodies, we really do gain access to powerful truths about ourselves and also about the world. And that's something we should be really serious about. That's something we should be really serious about. And I think that's it.
I think that's it. That's a good cherry on top. Yeah.
This was so much fun, sir. I appreciate your
Good.
time. I appreciate your vigor and your energy and your experience and your example.
Well,
And
thank
I've
you.
wanted to give
Thank.
rope flow a try. So the fact that you told me that you're doing it is
Oh yeah.
maybe will push me over to order that piece of equipment.
It's a good thing.
Probably when I move. I know somebody that I've talked with who's really big into rope flow.
Oh, cool.
So
Man,
I'll send you their handle.
I
Um,
appreciate it. Jordan, it's been good. This has been fun. Thank you.
Thank you,
Yeah.
and go move your body in beautiful ways, people.
I'm
And
going. I got back day today.
oh, let's
That's
go. All
exciting.
right, all right. Let's go. Thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll see you in the next episode.